Good morning. Good morning and welcome to session 3 of Stop the Shooting, Gun Violence Prevention and Advocacy. My name is Polly Peters. I serve on the Adult Ed Committee, and this is a co-sponsored Adult Ed World Mission and Social Justice class. Again, session 3. Our speaker today will be Brenda Mitchell. I will introduce you to her shortly. But I would first like to give a shout out to the next 2 weeks, which represent the next 2 Sundays before Thanksgiving, if you can believe it or not. Jeff Doan will be conducting a discussion class in here, so there is no Zoom or online option, entitled Reformed and Always Being Reformed. So as you know, Jeff's discussion classes are very enlightening and inspiring and, of course, educational, so come one, come all for that. That will take place here as well. So today's speaker is Brenda Mitchell, an ordained pastor, and she serves as the Illinois chapter co-leader for Moms Demand Action, and she is also a senior fellow with Everytown Survivor Network. Brenda serves on the Everytown Faith Advisory Council, the gun violence advocacy organization Purpose Over Pain, and she volunteers with the Mayor's Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Brenda is a certified grief support specialist who specializes in mindfulness-based stress reduction in cases of trauma and complicated grief. Brenda has her own unique family story to tell, and I will leave that to her. So, to begin our class, let us pray. Creator, sustainer, Redeemer, God, hear our prayer. We come to you this day, O Lord, heartbroken and grief-stricken, and we ask for your help. We beseech you to assist us in making it stop. Stop the shooting. We know we must each do our small part in this endeavor and not look the other way. So please guide us in the right direction. Help us begin by educating ourselves and by asking and seeking answers to the right questions. Help us to understand the hows and the whys behind the statistics. And then move us to act. Mobilize us, dear God. Answer us in this call, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so now.
Good morning, everyone. Again, glad to see you all back for this third session. As we move from this third session to figuring out what comes next in our own witness on this issue of gun violence as a congregation and your personal witness on this as you go about your daily lives, we wanted to have an interactive opportunity for you. So we've got some Post-it notes here, and maybe what I will do just to make sure that we don't get in the way of our panelists, maybe I'll put these in the back. But we have Post-it notes, and so what we'd like you to do with these is to why don't we take these yellow ones and use these to write down a next step, something that you personally would like to do or would perhaps like to see our congregation do to address this issue of gun violence. It could be based on information that you've heard these past couple of weeks or what you're inspired by today. So what's your next step? What should be our congregation's next step? Then I want you to use these pink ones for any questions that you have. So like a question in our work going forward, something we need to figure out, something we need to get more information on in order to act in strategic and in helpful ways. So question, a next step, and there are 2 sort of smaller tables in the back. They're kind of facing upright, and you're welcome to put these up there. And then what we'll do as a group, as a council and adult ed committee, we will collect these at the end, and there'll be a follow-up opportunity that we'll email you about where we can do some of this debriefing together, okay? So again, these are for next steps for yourself or for our congregation. These are for questions, things that we need to know in order to act effectively. So are there other questions on these, or what we're asking you, hoping that you will do? Great, so I will put these in the back, okay? Appreciate your help as we move forward.
That's fine. Okay, this too? These two?
Yeah,
Okay,
just as extras.
fabulous.
Thank you.
Make sure I'm not actually tall enough to get up here. I need a booster chair.
You made it. Good morning, everyone. Oh, wait, the mic.
Okay, good morning, everybody. So we're really happy to have you here, and we're happy to have Brenda here because Moms Demand Action is such a force in our culture. And it's been 11 years now, is that right?
Yes.
Since Moms
Yes,
was
we
started.
celebrated our 10th year, actually,
Yes.
going into it, yes.
I think I have that T-shirt.
You got that one, too.
Yeah.
She made me wear my T-shirt today. Let me just broadcast
Yeah,
real
show me
quick.
your, show us your
I want to be a twin, so let me just, I have mine as well today.
Okay.
I'm representing appropriately.
and your glasses, so we're all
Yes.
set. So just by way of a little bit of background, so we say it's been just about 11 years, but can you just give me some background on Shannon Watts, who did start Moms, has stepped down recently
Yes.
to do some other things, but she's a force of nature. And we'll
Definitely.
see a quick video of hers later. But can you just give us a little background on how, like the whole Sandy Hook thing, and then where Mom stands now in terms of members and chapters?
Oh, wow.
Just roughly.
Yes, I can do roughly. Shannon is a force of nature. She is fierce in what she has a passion. And Shannon, with the shooting, the mass shooting in Sandy Hook, and our children, Shannon took it upon herself to say, as most of us do, enough. Enough is enough. And if no one's going to speak up, we're going to begin to speak up and challenge the things that we see. And so she started in her kitchen, at the kitchen table, and what was about 500 volunteers at that point in time has now become 10 million across the country, with over 70 chapters for Moms Demand Action and Everytown Survivor Network, which is our corporate umbrella for moms.
Okay, see,
That's
you did it perfectly. So,
Nutshell.
I just wanted to verify are the current stats in America 120, approximately 120 people are killed per day
Absolutely.
by guns?
Yes, 120 are killed by daily, and that number was 100 last year. So this is not something that is decreasing, we're increasing. And what we often say, and what I often say is probably the person that says it, is that we don't understand that we're burying our children in a free country. And these numbers are alarming. And we often say it knows no zip code. So when we look at it, we have to be very, very, I said 700 local groups, I'm sorry. But there are 120 Americans are killed with guns, and more than 200 are shot and wounded. 59% of adults or someone they know or care about have experienced gun violence in their lifetime. Black Americans are disproportionately impacted by gun violence. They experience 12 times the gun homicides and nearly 3 times the fatal police shootings of white Americans. Women in the United States are 28 times more likely to be killed by gun violence than women in other high-income countries, and we're the
28?
Yes. Every month, an average of 70 women are shot and killed by an intimate partner. And every year, gun violence cost our nation about $557 billion of revenue. So, and like even this month, we've just come out of the Domestic Violence Month. And there's a bill, and there are things that you can do. So, right on one of those blue or those yellow tabs, there's Karina's bill that we're trying to move in
Right now.
Springfield right now. And we're asking people to contact their lawmakers and ask them. Karina is a mother who was shot and killed by her husband. He also shot and killed her daughter, and the son was wounded, Manny, but Manny's still amongst us, and Manny is fighting for Karina's bill. And I met Manny and talked to him, nice young man. So, we still have work to do.
And Karina's bill is on the website right now.
Yes.
It's easy to make the
Yeah,
contact or email.
64433,
Yeah,
text
so that's
Karina.
up there. And also there are there is a sheet with more statistics in the back. And we will have questions after, in a little bit.
Yes.
Let's talk about what the biggest challenges have been for moms. I want to ask you one thing though, because originally what I heard is that the hope was that we would make a federal effort, but that didn't work. So the strategy had to go to the states. Is that right?
Strategy has gone to the state. We have made some real key moves at the
Yeah.
federal level as well. We've got the the PICA, which is the Safety Act, which we passed last summer, which was one of the huge bills for Biden. And we actually just passed the assault weapons ban as well, although we still have work to do because city violence, the assault weapons is not what we're seeing in those communities. What we're seeing is your guns, your Glocks, those kind of things. So the assault is not what they're looking at in, people of color communities. So we still have more work to do in that area.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the only 10 states have the assault weapons ban, isn't that right?
Right.
And Illinois was fairly recent passage.
Illinois has one of the most progressive bills and stance on gun violence and gun violence protection. And we just recently, the Supreme Court of Illinois upheld the ban. And so that was a victory that just came, I think it was yesterday or the day before.
I think just a couple days
Yeah,
ago.
we just had it. Yeah, so, we're making strides.
Right,
But there's always still more work to do,
always.
always.
Yeah. So what have been some of the other recent, would you say, both challenges and victories?
Well, the victories are pretty much the ones that I have, but the other victories are that we have what we call demand a seat. And so with demand a seat, we have been very fortunate to put people in. I think we've got, in this past election cycle, more than 140 Moms Demand Actions won elected office. And so if sometimes it's like they say, you have to be the change that you want to see. And we changed the legislation in the last election cycle, and we managed to, put people in office that were like-minded and understood what the issues and the problems are. And so there's 140 moms that are out there, and even Lucy McBath, who was
Right.
really, who
She's
lost her
amazing.
son Jordan, and she went up to Congress, and she was ushered in under the gun violence movement. Some of our very locals, Congresswoman Robin Kelly, who has been a very strong advocate of gun violence and of gun safety, let's say it that way, because I'm going to just go in a different direction with that. But gun safety, and they're committed to it. Lucy lost her son, Jordan, her only child, and she has a video out there, Armor of Light, if you ever get an opportunity to see that.
What is that called?
Armor of Light. That's her story, her and Jordan. Beautiful piece about Lucy. Congresswoman McBath, if I see her, I always say Lucy, so I don't want to disrespect her title.
Okay. Since you're talking about Lucy, I wanted to also ask you about yourself. First, express, I'm sure, all of our sympathy because you lost a son.
Yes.
And if you want to just, whatever you want to say about that and whatever you would like to say about the role of survivors in the movement.
one of the things, and we've kind of been a force as well in changing the message. And, before it was kind of like, we were out there and every time someone was going to be elected, we were on the front line with the pictures and the cameras. And, then it became, we need to have an ask. We're kind of like the walking wounded, and we need to request trauma and trauma-informed resources for survivors of gun violence, whether it be community or personal trauma, we're experiencing it. And so how do we deal is not, people really wanted to put it in a mental health bucket, and I don't have a problem with mental health. I think whatever you need to do to right yourself is what you do. But what we were experiencing was one isolated incident has thrown our whole system into trauma, and yet there was nothing there that addressed it. And so we really push for that. And so even right now, mental health professionals have recognized trauma as an issue that is to be dealt with survivors. And so they say, well, why aren't they getting, well, they don't see themselves as being mental, only challenged. What they're seeing themselves as being heartbroken and broken and fragile. So how do we put the pieces back together? How do we learn to see ourselves? Because we're very different than what we were prior to. When I lost Kenneth, who was my oldest son, he had just taken his brother a week earlier to the airport to go for his third tour of duty in Afghanistan. And only a week later to be brought back to bury his older brother in a free country. And so how do we say, my husband, we're all actually have always lived a life of public service. My husband was a police and fire commissioner. I was an elected official in my village. I ran the football and cheerleading program. My husband's favorite dessert is Mom's apple pie. We were everything that you could think of. We did everything, not necessarily by the book, but we had good role models that taught us how to be good parents and how to raise our children. And to lose Kenneth was something that we never expected would be a part of our lives. And, I just kind of had the notion that it would never visit me because my mother lost a son to gun violence, And so I'm like, okay, we gave one up for the cause. That's not coming to my house, We're doing everything, by the book. And so, but it did come. And what it has done for me is to propel me into advocacy. And I said this, I had an anniversary party a couple of weeks ago, and I said, when Kenneth was younger and it was time for him to leave home, which, it's hard to get kids to leave home, and I said, this is your dad's and my legacy. You're living on our legacy. It's time for you to launch. You need to get your own legacy. And I said, it's really amazing because now I am living out Kenneth's legacy because as long as he's still speaking, because I'm still standing and advocating on his behalf. And it hasn't been an easy journey. I've almost lost my life 3 times from the trauma. I had to learn what trauma was and PTSD, but I managed to get through it, and now I'm an advocate for trauma and trauma-informed care. And I do run grief support groups for parents that have lost their children or others to gun violence. And as well as, believe it or not, because of the trauma that we experienced, we were able to identify with the trauma of COVID as well. And so I also lead COVID grief support as well. So,
Well, thank you for
Yes,
thank you for
thank you.
sharing that. Can you talk about the different roles for volunteers at MOMS?
oh, there's so many.
So
There's so
many.
many. And you know what? I'm going to say this because in Illinois, although I'm the co-lead, and there's so many wonderful people out there, and there's so much talent in Illinois. And I tell people all the time, I tell them all the time, I can't lead you, but I'll try to guide you, but can you please do what I say sometimes, because they're so talented and what they bring to the table, whether it's legal or legislative work. We have social media, communication. When there's something happen, we've got people that get out and move and phone bank, make phone calls to their representatives, make phone calls into their community to say, hey, we need you. Can you step up? Can you call? Can you let them know that this is serious for us? We have Be Smart, which you have there, which
There's a flyer back there.
there's a flyer to the back there. And Be Smart is very important because what it does is, used to be we just let our kids go and they could visit in other people's homes. And this was not the issue. Now, what we tell people is that when you're sending your children into other people's homes, then what you need to ask is, do you have a gun? And is your gun safe stored? Because there are a lot of children that are losing their lives to accidental shootings. And we can decrease that by educating the masses with Be Smart. Lock your guns up so that this is not your reality. And so there's so many other roles that are out there with, and then the Survivor Network, Everytown Survivor Network. The survivors, and what I like to say is that there's the survivors who've experienced the loss. And then there's the advocacy branch of it, which is, primarily Moms Demand Action. But survivors are also in Moms Demand Action. And what I often say is that we create balance. I can't do what I do if I don't have the support of the advocates that actually, are front line and on the ground running with everything. And sometimes it's very hard because you want to keep moving and moving forward. And even like right now, Karina's bill is not our bill, but we're supporting that organization. And so our networking with other gun violence prevention organizations is very important to us as well and on the forefront, whether it's Brady, One Aim, GPAC. There's so many ones out there, Survivors Empowered. But, we're a force, and we're a united force to make the change that we want to see so that this doesn't happen to anybody else's household. It does not come to visiting. Like we say, bullets have no zip code. And I was just going to reference Highland Park. And when I say to them, we can't forget city violence. City violence is mass shootings as well. We had 12. Mass shootings are defined as anything that's more than 4 people. So if you have 12 in the city of Chicago, in one neighborhood, you've had a mass shooting. And so with Highland Park, what I said to them is that, we felt what you felt. It may not have been our experience, but having firsthand knowledge of what that pain and what that experience was, we were devastated as well. Because that was attack, and I always tease them, they just laugh at me. I said that was an attack on Mayberry, and for those of you that know, and Mayberry lost her innocence. And so they will never be the same again, but we can't confuse the work that we have. We can't stop there because since then, it's happened in so many different places. And I think at the same time as Highland Park, we had Uvalde, which was a shame, a sin and a shame. When a mother sends their child out to school in their favorite gym shoes, and the only way that you can identify your child is the gym shoes that you sent them to school in. And so it moves us to action. We can't afford not to move because, and I don't want to, say anything, but, they're not acting on our behalf. And these things, it's not that we're challenging anybody's Second Amendment rights, because my husband owns a gun. But his has always been safe stored. My kids have never entertained the thought of going and playing with their dad. But first of all, they could never get it. So it wasn't anything to entertain. He still has it. He worked in law enforcement. So it's not that you challenge it. It's just that you're asking people to use common sense because we're still losing people unnecessarily so. And it's not that we didn't have laws for common sense gun laws. We let it expire.
Right, right. Okay, thank you so much. Now we will take questions. Oh, the video, sorry. The video.
Hey everyone. After these horrific shooting tragedies, I get so many direct messages and emails and texts and calls of people asking what they can do. And it's complicated. Obviously, your donations matter, your support matters, tweeting, posting on social media, it all matters. Your outrage matters. I had someone tell me today that it's not anger that's going to win this issue, it's love. And I think there is nothing more powerful than women and mothers' anger. I think it is love. And I've watched it move mountains in the last 10 years. If you're watching this and you feel hopeless, you need to know that so much has happened in the last decade. A quarter of all Democrats had an A rating in Congress in 2012. Today, none do. We have stopped the NRA's agenda 90% of the time in state houses across the country in the last 10 years. We have passed hundreds and hundreds of good gun bills, including the first federal gun safety legislation in a generation last summer. I know it's not enough. It was a baby step on a much, much longer path. But what I have seen is that incremental work leads to revolutions. And so that's really why I wanted to get on here and talk to you, which is to say that the best thing you can do is commit to doing the unglamorous heavy lifting of grassroots activism. I know it's not as easy as sending a donation. I know it's not as sexy as, showing up at a march or a rally. All those things are important and they should be done. But what really moves mountains is showing up at gun bill hearings, creating relationships with your lawmakers, changing the culture by educating people about secure gun storage. This is what activism is in this country. I believe women are uniquely the special sauce of that activism. I've seen it again and again. We have tried to organize men, and I'm so grateful for the men who wear Moms Demand Action shirts and let women lead. But at the end of the day, the levers of power that women have to pull in a nation where we only hold about 25% of the elected positions in this country, 500,000 elected positions, in a country where we hold less than 5% of the Fortune 1000 CEO positions, we can use our voices and votes. We're the majority of the voting population in this country. And, as I had this discussion with Soraya Chomely, a feminist author who wrote Rage Becomes Her, which you should read if you want to read about how rage actually does affect change. But I really do think that most of the 75% of the male lawmakers in this country, most of whom are white men, they are afraid of their moms. So they are either really excited to see us coming or they're really scared. And they know that at the end of the day, if they do the right thing, we will have their back. And if they do the wrong thing, we will have their job. And that does not happen overnight. It's many years of electoral work. It is many years of legislative work. It is many years of cultural work. So we have got to commit to doing that hard work. And so if you're interested and you don't have to be a mom, we are now mothers and others, text the word READY to 64433. Again, text the word READY to 64433. A volunteer will reach out to you and tell you how you can plug in where you live. Look, I wouldn't have done this work for nearly 11 years now as a full-time volunteer if I didn't think we're winning. We absolutely are. It is only a matter of time, but because 110 people are shot and killed every single day and hundreds more are wounded, time is of the essence. So again, thank you so much for reaching out and asking what you can do. And what I'm asking you to do is to carve out even an hour every week to do this work, right? We call that naptivism. It all adds up. Every email, every tweet, every call, every meeting you attend, every conversation you have with a lawmaker or a friend or family member, it all adds up. So again, please text the word READY to 64433 and join our badass army of volunteers who are getting this done every single day across the country. Thank you.
And I'll be happy to go around the room and take questions. Questions? Anybody have a question? I see. Okay. All the way back here. Okay. And give us your name, too.
Anthony, I can't hear how to hear you. This lady beautiful. She hope, and she's got to help people out there in world change. And you hope that you want the world change for everybody. Especially this lady Caucasian in the front. That's difficult, lonely in the town. Not mixing with people who don't know where they're going. And by the way, I can hear at all, but I hear very loud, clearly. Nice to meet y'all.
Thank you, and thank you for that comment and for the way in which you're inspiring and giving hope. You can hear that loud and clear, that hope coming through.
Thank you so much. And we do. It is hope. Someone asked me, when you look at what you see.
Is there a mic near you, Brenda? I just want to make sure.
I'm here. Really, I'm here. Someone asked me just last week in an interview, how do you maintain hope? And how do you, when you look at what you see and you hear the same thing every day on the TV, how do you establish hope for yourself? And my response to the person was, I think of Abraham, and I think a lot. And I think of the time when he asked God, if there be one in the city, will you save the city? And so I got to believe those of us that are on the front line are those ones that Abraham spoke of, that allows God to continue to be God and us to continue to be human. And my dad always said, what we do for the better good of humanity. And I realize at this point in my life, I don't belong to me. I belong to the better good of humanity.
Thank you for sharing that. And maybe just as a brief follow-up, when we introduced each other at the very beginning, Brenda, you are Pastor Brenda.
I am a pastor.
And so I'm getting a sense from your reference to Abraham of how your faith inspires and influences the work that you do. But do you want to say anything more about just how your faith journey and story have contributed to the way that you see the issue of gun violence prevention?
You know, this has been, like I said to you, a very troublesome journey for me. When this first happened, I thought, okay, let me tell you what I did when it first happened, speaking of faith. When I got a call in the middle of the night from my other grandson's mother saying that Kenneth had been hurt and they put a sheet over him. Okay, so a sheet tells me my son is no longer here. And so I went into the bathroom, and I stopped a moment, and I said, Lord, help my understanding. This I don't understand, because I always have done things for other people. I ran a program and I've taken other people in my house, children, and raised them. And I said, help my understanding. I've taken care of other people's children. This I don't understand. I said, but don't leave me bitter. Don't change my view of the world. I still love people, and I still want to be able to exercise that love. And so as I went on this journey, then I went out to see about Kenneth. But that was my beginning of acknowledging and understanding what faith does. And I had to put my faith in operation. And so I went from the day before, in less than 24 hours, where I told God, there is nothing that I need from you. Thank you for meeting all of my needs. I just want to give you thanks. not saying that I needed anything. And in less than 24 hours, I didn't realize that I would need strength. But along this journey, and it is a faith journey, I had to believe that I would live and not die. And so even all along through this journey, my words were always, faith I have. Even when I didn't understand myself, or I was locked inside of my head trying to find what everybody said was a new norm. And it's not a new norm. And new norm was absolutely making me crazy. But what I did learn and what I share with others now is that I could create a new narrative. Because norm is over here, and Kenneth occupied that space with me in creating a new narrative, because I know that I would never reach that level of happiness again because Kenneth is not in it. But I did learn how to create a new narrative for myself, a space where I could be happy and I could share that space still with Kenneth in the spiritual sense. And since there is no longer a physical presence, and I'm satisfied in my soul with that, and it's enough. It has to be enough. And God's grace has to be sufficient for me, and I believe that.
Thank you so much for the depth of your sharing and the way in which I think it helps us all to process those kinds of changes and that grief in our own lives as well.
And what you said also reminded me that we wanted to talk to you about purpose over pain. And I forgot to ask.
It's okay. Purpose over pain. I started with a couple of organizations. My first initial was Black on Black Love. Replace Black on Black violence with Black on Black love. From there, I ended up with Purpose Over Pain. Annette Holt, Commissioner Holt now, Pamela Bosley, who you kind of see on TV sometimes as well, active, and they're really out of St. Sabina. And so Annette, Commissioner Holt said to me when she was fresh, how do you know if you're healed? And I said to her, you'll know when you're healed when you stop asking the question that can't be answered. Why? And she said, well, I can't do what you do. A year later, I saw Commissioner Holt, and she was all over the place. And she's like, what are you doing, girl? I'm like, I said, I don't know. And she says, I'm going to Springfield. You want to go to Springfield? No, don't want to go to Springfield. I said, I thought you said you couldn't do it. I do. So and that got me back into advocacy with Purpose Over Pain with her and Pam. And they're an advocacy group that advocates for legislation, but they also do grief support as well. Pam and Annette at one point in time, I think Pam still is, with Everytown and Moms Demand Action as well. But Purpose Over Pain is their focus, and they are a gun violence prevention group as well. And I'm still a member with them as well, and very much committed to the work that they do as well and lift it up. And with them, we actually, Yo-Yo Ma actually came to Purpose Over Pain. He's an outstanding. He took a cab to the south side of Chicago, Auburn Gresham, to meet Father Flager. He wanted to meet the moms, and he wanted to do a work with us. And so we created songs about our children with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And yes, it is a huge wow. And we have sheet music for it. And if you want to look it up, all of our songs are out there. It's Notes for Peace, but he wanted to meet us. And what a humble person. And it's an experience that we will never forget. There have been a lot of them, but when a world-renowned person such as Yo-Yo Ma takes a cab to the south side, and then no appointment with Father Flager, but asked could he meet him, could he meet, and they told him, Yo-Yo Ma is out there and he wants to meet you. And Father Mike says, oh, come on, stop. They go, no, Yo-Yo Ma is out there and he wants to meet you. And he's one of his favorite, artists. So that's how it started, and there's a lot of songs that are out there from across the Chicagoland area of mothers who have taken their pain and their words and put it to music. So, yes, it is. But Notes for Peace, you can Google it, and it'll come up. All of our songs are out there.
That's great. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah. Illinois, in a sense, has some very good has several good gun laws, but we're surrounded by states.
I need,
Illinois has, in many cases, have good gun laws, but we're surrounded by states where there's very lax laws, particularly in handguns, straw purchases, et cetera. And the Presbyterian Church USA has a policy called Matthew 25 Project, where we're where the policy is to go after, to try to improve gun safety by restricting ghost gun purchases, et cetera. How can, you gave us how we can work as individuals, but how can things such as the local, not so much the local churches, but a network of churches, both within Chicago, within Illinois, and within the surrounding area, how can we best work to complement and supplement what you in Moms Demand Action are trying to do and other organizations? What's a key role that we should be doing?
advocacy. And I'm going to tell you, we've got some wonderful men out there that's doing some great work as well. And some of them have created this T-shirt that says, "Man enough to be a mom." And I love it. But they're engaged and they're involved. And really, there's a lot of work to be done. So if you do go to 64433 Ready, you'll find yourself in there, whether it's legislative. There's another thing that deals with the government things, GSAN, that makes phone calls and things like that as well. But even like we do Advocacy Day in Springfield, where we just passed, there's so much that we've done. We've just passed the Accountability Act so that manufacturers can now be held accountable for the guns that they're bringing in our communities. And so we are on the front line with things, but we always need more committed people. Because, and let me just say this way, because when there's a mass shooting, we get a lot of people that come out, and we're excited, and as quickly as they come, a lot of times they leave. And so we don't really get to see those numbers accentuate themselves. But, if you go there, and you can even contact me, I'd be more than happy to talk to you further about it. But there's a lot of work. We got chapters. I think we actually have a downtown chapter as well on the Gold Coast. We also have some that was across the state. So if you are interested in getting active, just go to 64433 Ready, and they'll send information to you at that point in time.
Brenda, just as a follow-up question to that, are there instances in which you have seen like faith communities like ours or collections of churches, not just active here in Illinois, but let's say going across the border to Indiana and working with MDA groups there, or in Wisconsin, or Iowa, Missouri, to our west and south? Have you seen some of that regional work happen where it's a lot harder, and there are more challenges with the ways that those states configure their laws and their legislators?
It's hard, but I just a year or two ago, we led a Hands Across Indiana, and we had a conference and a press conference to ask them to stop trafficking guns into Illinois, because they have some of the most liberal gun laws. And so in other states that border us, their gun laws do not mirror ours. And so we do have connectivity, and we do support in other, regional states and across the country. We may get on a phone bank that calls all the way into support for Virginia. We may get on a phone bank that, asks to change but some of these are very much rooted, in their red states, which means that it's very hard to move the needle because they have bought into that Second Amendment theology. And so as faith leaders, and I think that this is something that's very, very important for us, because we're just now getting on the front line. And I compliment you here because you recognize the need and you're not shying away from the issue that says we all have to stand up and be accounted for, because, and yes, I am a pastor, because I'm going to the next scripture. Only what we do for Christ will last. But, it's true. We examine our moral compass, and our moral compass won't let us be silent, and I think that that's the thing that is very challenging. And the NRA has been a force for a number of years. It is very difficult to challenge that, but we've been successful in challenging and extending, and our boundaries are far greater than theirs. And so because all of us stood up, and because you're standing up, and if other faith leaders get on board, guess what we can do? We can continue to challenge the NRA. It used to be everybody was publicly saying, yeah, I'm NRA, and all of them are in their pockets. And when they saw our red shirts, they ran the other way. Guess what? They don't run the other way anymore. They want to be gun sense advocates because we're changing the face of this country and saying you're burying our children, and this is not a good look for us as a free country.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Love having you here. And we're going to finish up with, I'm sorry, was there another question? Oh, sorry. Didn't see that.
Sorry.
Thanks, Joe.
Sorry, we missed you.
Pastor Brenda, I really enjoyed your talk here. And, what I love about it is that you recognize that there's a spectrum of solutions for this problem that's very broad and very complex. And I really like your 4 points here. And I can tell that your husband is a police officer.
Yes.
Because of number 4, which a lot of people don't really talk about number 4 on here. But, there's a clear and present danger of gun violence every single night in this city
Yes.
and across the country. And we have to work on the long-term stuff, but we also have to work on the immediate, and which means enforcement. And I was fortunate to serve on a board of directors of a company called ShotSpotter, which is a gunshot detection technology that came out of Silicon Valley that identifies exactly when and where a gun is fired. So you put a acoustic network of sensors in a neighborhood, and it tells you exactly when and where somebody's shooting a gun. And it has tremendous benefits of arresting bad guys and putting them away. And it allows for people to be arrested almost in real time. It creates a database of where and when crime is taking place. And there's a few things that I learned over that period. One is that technology can play a very important role in this problem. We got a real problem today in Chicago, and it's across the country, where we're not getting enough officers to enlist to become patrolmen. It's a nationwide problem. And we need things that are going to help address that labor shortage, because this is not something that's going to go away in the near term. And I also learned that there's a remarkable amount of mayhem created by an incredibly tiny number of real bad guys. And they're always guys, let's face it. I mean, remarkable. It goes beyond the 80-20 rule. The statistics indicate that like 90% of all the gunfire is created by about 10% of the perpetrators.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your husband knows this. And a third thing I learned is that there's a huge amount of denial among elected officials as to how much gunfire actually takes place. So when you set up the ShotSpotter system and you turn it on, you know exactly how many guns are being fired in that area. And we've found in certain cities, the system is installed in over 100 cities in the United States, that 10 times as much gunfire is actually taking place than is called into the 911 system, if you can believe that. It's just shocking. And so I'm curious to know, on your number 4, what can private citizens do to talk to their officials about the immediate problem, like of enforcement, of supporting the police that are trying to solve this problem? What types of actions would you recommend?
I think holding our legislators accountable, number one, and there are some committees that have come out, the mayors and the governor's office that, are gun violence prevention and, trauma-informed committees and networks. There's so many things. This gun violence movement has produced so many things to counteract what has been done, because it's not just that. Some of these things are driven by historical trauma, and people that live in an area where they believe there is no hope, they have nothing to lose. And so we have to change the trajectory. I mean, because how do you, and I was thinking about this yesterday when I was going over the information, and this is just like real talk. I've seen a lot in the time that I've been here. And how do you take an 8-year-old and execute? That tells you that we've got real issues. The young man that was just shot the other day in the Halloween shooting, Paris is a paraplegic. And he said, and after talk that I had, and I talked about trauma and trauma-informed resources, he says, that's what's wrong with me. I'm traumatized now. And says my community is traumatized. And that's so true. And now Paris has now had one more trauma because he was shot also in the Halloween shooting. And I was devastated to see that. I was devastated waking up on a Sunday morning. And that was my reality. But there's a lot of technology out there. And one of the things as a citizen is to ask that data be present, accurate data, so that we can understand what we're fighting against. I'm on a committee with a village that is looking at data and technology, and I'm going to wrap up, data and technology that identifies where the patterns are. And so we can do real-time deployment into dealing with those situations at hand. It's really pretty much kind of like what you're saying. So I think we have opportunities, and I do believe, if private citizens get more involved, we can change the trajectory of what we see, and we can call for change, and we can say enough, and it becomes a reality for all of our lives.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I apologize for my voice. I'm just getting over a cold. So I couldn't talk yesterday at all. So today is a good day.
We very quickly, we thank you so much. We quickly want to have two of our committee members from the World Mission and Social Justice Council just talk for like 2 minutes each about what they do and why they do it. Maggie McGuire, would you start us off? Whatever you like.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I was curious to know whether trauma and violence is inherited. And so I Googled, and guess what? It is. The trauma doesn't change our DNA, but trauma can guide which genes are activated or deactivated. When traumatized, a body can adapt by adjusting gene expression. That is, how information encoded in a gene gets played out in everyday life, and sometimes that means violence. Some of the changes, that is, the adaptations, can be passed on to children. What got me was the injustice to that child, because that child has done nothing, and yet there's a predisposition for violence. So, but there is hope, and that's what keeps me going. The changes are not definitive. Rather, they are adaptable and can be rewritten by life experiences. And life experiences are the types of things that Moms Demand Action are doing. They're the types of things that CRED is doing. And so my response to all this is to want to support those kinds of organizations, and also to get more informed and be more politically active, because it is, the solution lies in the law, I think.
Absolutely.
I'll be super brief because I do want, as a former teacher, I really want to hear from people with their Post-it notes in the back. So I'm super excited about that. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. It was just, your stories were just incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've been so fortunate to work with folks here at Fourth who are working on anti-violence work. I help lead in the summer. St. Sabina does the peace walks every Friday night. It's a great way to build relationships and learn on a one-on-one basis. I think people's stories give us the wisdom that we need to move forward. And I'm also just super grateful that we're doing this work in community. It can be hard sometimes to maintain that. I've lost students to gun violence as a former teacher. It's hard to maintain sometimes that sense of what can I do? That hopelessness starts to set in. But we have relationships with each other that are meant to sustain us. We go to church every week for a reason, because there's not one answer. There's not one thing we can do. It is a practice, and it is a practice in community. And that's what we're being called. That's what I feel like I'm being called to do, is to connect with people so that that hopelessness does not set in, that we continue to move forward and we do it as a community. So super grateful.